Hello, welcome to our special broadcast. It's been over a week since Operation Sindoor, when the Indian Armed Forces first struck 9 terror camps in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. India called the May 7 strikes, which were in retaliation to the terror attack in Pahalgam on 22nd April, measured and non-escalatory. But that was the only start. 2 days later, India targeted several Pakistani air bases in precision strikes. These included the Rafiki Air Base, the Sialkot Air Base and the Rahim Yar Khan Air Base, among others. The government later claimed that India's loitering munitions accomplished the objective in just 23 minutes. Both the nations have since agreed to halt military actions. However, Prime Minister Modi made it clear that Operation Sindoor is the new normal for India's stance on terror. In a series of press conferences over the past few days, the armed forces confirmed that Pakistan attempted to engage a number of military targets in northern and western India using drones and missiles. However, these were swiftly neutralized by the Indian air defense systems. The government also said that the Indian Air Force bypassed and jammed Pakistan's Chinese-supplied air defense systems during their strikes on Pakistan Air Base. The centre added that all strikes were executed without any loss of Indian assets. The Chinese government have voiced its concerns over the escalating tension between the two nations and urged them to exercise restraint. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh visited Srinagar today. He also called for a global supervision of Pakistan's nuclear capabilities. Reports suggest that Pakistan's Water Resources Ministry has reached out to India to discuss the terms of the Indus Waters Treaty that has been kept in abeyance. External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar, however, has said that the treaty will remain in abeyance.
कैसे गैर जिम्मेदाराना तरीके से पाकिस्तान द्वारा भारत को अनेक बार एटमी धमकियां दी गई हैं। आज श्रीनगर की धरती से मैं पूरी दुनिया के सामने यह सवाल उठाना चाहता हूं कि क्या ऐसे गैर जिम्मेदार और रोग नेशन के हाथों में परमाणु हथियार सुरक्षित हैं?
The cabinet committee on security and the government obviously was very clear that the Indus Waters Treaty is held in abeyance and will be continued to be held in abeyance until cross-border terrorism by Pakistan is credibly and irrevocably stopped.
To take this forward, we're now joined by Ashok Kantha, former Indian ambassador to China. Master Kantha, thank you very much for joining us on the program. What would be your sense, your reading on China's role in the India-Pakistan conflict that we saw last week? China has said on record that they were in touch with both nations. NSA Ajit Doval spoke to Wang Yi also during the crisis. And one statement that really stood out is the Chinese Foreign Ministry saying that they will continue to stand by Pakistan in upholding its sovereignty, territorial integrity and independence. So how do you see China's role in the conflict between India and Pakistan after Operation Sindoor?
You know, we have to look at China's role at multiple levels. One, in terms of its diplomatic pronouncements, it made certain comments that you just referred to when we carried out strikes against 9 terrorist targets on 7th May. It issued a statement from Foreign Office which described our action as regrettable. Subsequently, it did not use any terminology of condemnation. It was relatively measured in its comments, but clearly tilting towards Pakistan's side. But I'm more interested in China's action, what it has been doing. In UN Security Council, it was clearly supporting Pakistan, though we managed to get a resolution which was quite all right from our perspective. Also, later, when the whole thing was sort of coming to an understanding through bilateral consultations between DGMOs, China sought to interject itself into this matter. Wang Yi spoke to our national security advisor, and Pakistan sought to project that China had played a mediatory role, which is not correct. In fact, as far as I'm aware, India had reached out to all members of UN Security Council, with exception of Pakistan, of course, and China also. It was Wang Yi who got in touch with us. So there was no mediatory role by China in this matter, as you know, Pakistan has sought to make out. But we have to see, today Pakistan's entire defense hardware is of Chinese origin. Last 5 years, more than 80% of defense imports have come from Pakistan, and they were deployed quite extensively against us with very mixed results. As you mentioned, China supplied air defense system, as also US supplied air defense system, failed quite miserably. Our Air Force could access through missiles and drones well inside Pakistani territory and inflict fairly heavy damage, which has come across very clearly now from satellite imagery. I'd also like to point out that China had just come out with a national security white paper on 12th May. It's a paper we are still studying. But from what we understand, there's a specific reference to regional hotspots, India-Pakistan situation, as also to Kashmir. So this is an old attempt to once again hyphenate India and Pakistan and seek to project Pakistan's behavior in context of so-called regional hotspot, trying to equate India and Pakistan. So on the whole, I'll say that China has been cautious, but definitely tilting in favor of Pakistan.
Okay, I'd also like to ask you about the use of Chinese equipment. You referred to that and how well Indian equipment performed in competition. Now, you had the Indian government saying yesterday on record that Indian Air Force managed to bypass and jam Pakistan Chinese supplied air defense systems, including the HQ-9. We managed to complete the mission in 23 minutes. We also downed PL-15 missiles as well, and we've got evidence of that because some of these missiles have been seized by the Indian forces. So would you say that the Indian equipment, our indigenously built defense equipment, sir, and also our fighter jets, our drone systems, our forces altogether were able to dominate Pakistan despite the Chinese equipment, and our equipment performed better?
When it comes to air defense system, you referred to China-supplied HQ-9 air defense system. Pakistan also had US-supplied air defense system. They did not perform well. It's very evident the fact that we could launch precision attacks against air bases and other targets within Pakistan. So on that side, I think clearly we had the upper hand. We are still a little unclear about what happened on the morning of 7th May. If you look at Chinese social media as also Western media, they're abuzz with claims on how Chinese J-10C and PL-15 performed rather well. In fact, South China Morning Post has referred to deployment of hypersonic missiles for the first time by Pakistan, China-supplied missiles. This is something we'll have to wait and watch. I think we have to now work on the assumption, and this is not a new assumption, that China will double down on supply of military hardware to Pakistan. And China has a reasonably good quality military hardware. They are, in fact, rather excited about the fact that their military hardware, for the first time in combat situation, performed relatively well with Western platforms. It might be partly sort of exaggeration, but we need to follow these developments very carefully because they have very important implications for national security, and also how China-Pakistan strategic nexus will develop in future. On that, we should have no doubt that those links will be strengthened.
Right. So you're saying the strategic linkages with China will only strengthen. And I would also like to draw your attention, sir, at a time when we were having such problems with Pakistan, and we ourselves have been trying to negotiate an early trade deal with the United States. In fact, we've given so many concessions even outside the trade deal. US went ahead and had a trade deal with China, whereby US duties on Chinese products now fall to 30%. China's tariffs on US goods will drop to 10%. Now, how do you think India is left in this situation when US and China have struck a deal on trade? You've got Donald Trump, the US president, saying that he was a mediator between India and Pakistan. He managed to equate the two together. So where does this leave India, India's ambitions as a global supplier and to be a big supplier for the US as well?
Parikshit, India and China adopted very different approaches when it came to reciprocal tariffs imposed by President Trump. As you know, Prime Minister had visited Washington, D.C. even before that, and we were in touch with USA on bilateral trade agreement. We did not impose any retaliatory tariffs, whereas China imposed tariffs up to 125% on imports in the USA, and it took a fairly tough line vis-a-vis USA. Finally, one can say that both USA and China, for different reasons, blinked simultaneously. And talks which took place in Geneva, within 2 days, they managed to arrive at some kind of truce, which will last for at least 90 days. As you mentioned, US brought down its tariffs on imports from USA from China from 145% to 30%. Already it had given a carve-out for very large segment of imports, electronics, semiconductors, handsets, etc., valuing more than $100 billion last year. China also has brought down its tariffs from 1.5% to 10%. The actual rates will be somewhat different. The bottom line is that the two largest economies in the world, today they're so intertwined. Economic decoupling is not possible. And they both were hurting. And they found some kind of off-ramp, but this is not end of the story. China, US contestation in different domains will continue.
Right. Ambassador Kantha, my final question. You're right, because that's what Donald Trump and the Chinese also said, that we're not looking at generalized decoupling. But finally, sir, very briefly, what does this show about India's diplomatic outreach so far, our geopolitical strategy? Finally, at the end of the day, who were the countries, which were the countries which India could really depend on? Or does this only goes to show that when push comes to shove, or when there is a crisis, India will only have to rely on its own resources? Is Atmanirbharta the way to go?
I think there is absolutely no doubt about the fact that while there can be an aspect of external balancing of China, working with other like-minded countries, finally we have to depend on our own, indigenous capabilities. And those capabilities, whether it be in military domain or economic domain or strategic domain, will need to be built up. This will require partnership with other countries, no doubt about it. But a country as large as India, which believes in its strategic autonomy, cannot really afford to depend on others to advance its own larger national interests. But that doesn't mean we don't have. We have good friends and strategic partners. They understand our concern. They share our concern. And they need to work with them to mutually build up capabilities. We also have a lot to contribute in different areas, and that is appreciated by our partners.
Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador Kantha, for joining us on the program. We're taking a short break, but when we return, US President Donald Trump says he has told Apple CEO Tim Cook that his administration is not interested in Apple building in India. The president's first official visit to the Gulf also takes center stage after US signs mega deals with Qatar and Saudi Arabia. We will be joined by former Foreign Secretary Kanwal Sibal and former Indian Ambassador to Qatar, KP Fabian, on the show. Stay tuned.